Hello, welcome to the Azure Kubernetes Deployment Series Part 3. In this series, we are going to learn how to provision infrastructure resources using Biceps and automate it using Azure Pipeline. In our first lab, we have already learned how to provision the resources and deploy the applications using command line tools. And in the second lab, we have automated it using Azure pipelines. So in this third lab, we are going to use Bicep to provision the resources. So if you see in my VS Code, I have added another folder called Bicep under the Infra folder, and this contains the the code to provision the resources for ACR, AKS, and a role assignment. You can see here I have another Bicep file called main. So the main Bicep file, it call these modules, and from the main Bicep parameter, I'm passing few of the parameters. You can see the project name, environment, location, resource instance. So parameter, the Bicep parameter file contains the parameter that need to be passed to the main.bicep. You can see here, these are the parameters that it will receive from the Bicep parameter. And apart from this, it includes few predefined parameters as well. The main Bicep, in the main Bicep, we have different resources that we are going to create. The first one is the resource group. The second one is ACR. So the ACR, it will call the module, and using this is the syntax that we are using for calling the ACR Bicep file to provision the ACR resource. Here we are passing two parameters, the ACR name and the location where we are going to create. If you go to ACR Bicep, you can see these are the parameters that we are receiving. So before explaining this, let me start the deployment because the deployment takes some time. So during the deployment process, I can explain the Bicep implementation and the pipeline. So you can go to the Azure DevOps. So if you can go to under this all, we can find there is a Kubernetes 03. So here we can see there is an infra pipeline Bicep. So let run this pipeline. Okay, let it continue. So let's here we are discussing about the Bicep. So here you can see like ACR, it contains the code to deploy the ACR in the Azure, and in AKS we can see this is the code that used to create the AKS cluster in Azure. And for that, from the main Bicep, we are calling this AKS module, and we are passing these parameters. You can see the parameters here. This it is accepting these parameters here, and then it is used while creating the AKS. Similarly, we have another role assignment Bicep. Role assignment Bicep. So this is required for to provide access role to the AKS to pull the images from the Azure Content Registry. So you can see from the main Bicep file, we are passing three parameters here. One is the AKS ID that we can receive from the as a output from the AKS cluster. I mean the AKS Bicep file here. If you see here, these are the output where we are returning the AKS name, AKS ID, and principal ID. The principal ID is nothing; it is the AKS under properties, then identity profile, the kubelet identity. So this we are taking as a principal ID, and here while calling the role assignment module, we are passing these arguments. One more thing we are passing here is the ACR full role definition ID. So if you can see here, this is the ID. It's a predefined role definition. And if you go to check this ID in Microsoft, we can browse this one. And if you go inside this and search this one, we can find this is ACR pool. So this is the role definition that can be assigned to the AKS to pull the images from the ACR cluster, so ACR registry. Okay, so yeah, so this is the structure of our Bicep. It contains three files for creating three resources, and the main Bicep parameter to supply the parameters to the main Bicep file. And in the main Bicep file, we are simply calling these resources as a module inside the main file. So what is the use of, or what is the advantage of using module? So the purpose is basically, when in our infrastructure, if you want to create multiple resources of same type, for example, we have to create multiple storage accounts. So instead of creating it, call creating the resource many times in the main file, we can create a module of storage account, and that we can call it in the main.bicep multiple times with different name and parameters. Okay, so that is the advantage, so that it will be just used as a code reuse. Okay, so let's see whether our deployment is done or not. Yeah, it is still in progress. Let's see whether it is something created in our uh, Azure subscription. You can see in the Azure portal, if you go to my subscription, then I can see a resource group. It is already created, and under that, yeah, these two are the Azure Content Registry and the Kubernetes. Both resources are created, but still it is in progress. We need to wait for a few more seconds or minute. Okay, but in order to deploy the application, we can see we have the main manifest files here, and also I have created all the pipelines. It is similar way that we have done in our second lab. So I'm not discussing on this now. We'll just want to verify whether our infrastructures are created successfully or not. Yeah, still in progress, but let's try to connect to the AKS, whether we are able to do it or not. Let's check. If you go to here, we can declare this variable. Okay, then this is the resource group, and this one is our AKS name. Okay, now let's get the credential of our AKS for communicating to the cluster. Yeah, it's done. Now create a alias for the kubectl command. Okay, now if we'll try to get the node, yeah, we are able to get the node of the cluster here. Okay, so it means our deployment is success, but still the pipeline is in progress. It will take some few more minute. Yeah, it is still in progress. Anyway, so it will be complete soon. So in this lab, we learned how we provision the infrastructure using Bicep and automated using the Azure pipeline. So let's discuss how the pipeline is created here. So if you can see here, this is the Bicep Infra pipeline. So in this case, we have two stages are here. One is the build stage, the other one the dev stage. In build stage, it will validate our Bicep file and also create the artifact. It will publish the artifact. And in the second stage or the dev stage, it will create the infrastructure by calling the Azure Bicep command. So if you see, I have in this pipeline, I have defined another template called infra template. So if you go to the infra templates, under that I have a infra validation YAML file and a deploy resources YAML file. So the validation stage, it is calling the infra validation YAML file. And here we are passing the environment and the service connection. So if you go to this infra pipeline here, you can see in the first task, we are validating it. So for validation, this is the command we are using. So it will do AG deployment sub means it's subscription, and validate the command to validate the template file. The template file, our template file is the main.bicep, and the parameters file name is the main bicep para. So that we are passing here. So it will validate our bicep pipeline, sorry, bicep files. And the next task is it will copy those infra folder to the artifact staging directory, and from there it will publish it as a infra package. So this is the job for the infra validation YAML file. And and in the dev stage, we are calling the deploy resources YAML file. So here we are using a task, Azure CLI task, and in that we are using HG deployment subscription create to create the proper infrastructure, and we are passing the template file, the file name, and that is nothing the main.bicep, and the parameter file name to pass the parameter to the main.bicep. So this will provision the resources. So this is the infrastructure pipeline for Bicep, and this this will be this is created as a pipeline in Azure DevOps. You can see here this this is not, it is completed now. And so if we see, go to pipeline and all, and under this Kubernetes 03, this infra pipeline, here it is referring to that Bicep file, Bicep infra pipeline. Okay, it's the same thing what we are showing here in this case here. Okay, so now the the deployment is done, it's completed. You can see here the deployment is completed, it is completed successfully. Yeah, so that's all about today. And the application pipeline is similar to the similar the way we have discussed in lab 2. So next lab we are going to learn how to use Helm chart for deploying the applications in AK cluster. So till then, bye bye.